The First Nation version is an attempt to capture the style of an oral storyteller in English, worded in a way Native people can really relate to.
I will retell this story in a way that will relate to our Native people.
The text is sacred. The text needs to be communicated in a way that people will understand it in the best way you possibly can do it. That's a guardrail. Secondly, you have to honor culture. You have to understand that everybody hears things differently. And people of different cultures, even though they've learned English, many of them still maintain a way of thinking that came from their original tongues and their original languages, especially since we're only sometimes one generation away. And many of the Native staff, even today, they're already, they're not language speakers, but they can understand much of their language, and they were taught to think in traditional ways. And so that thought process does come over to English somewhat.
He broke the fry bread into smaller pieces and gave them to us to give to the people.
My Indian name is Gitchianimikim and Nomashkiki Manadu. It was given me by my mentors. It means voice of great thunder with a good medicine spirit. I'm also known as Terry.
And my name is Donnie Begay. I am currently from Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I live with my wife and 3 kids, and I've been on staff for about 13 years with Crew now.
Well, I grew up in Michigan, out in the country, in between Lansing and Grand Rapids. I went to school at Lakewood High School. So I did not grow up in my native culture, but I knew from my grandma and from my grandpa on my dad's side that we had native heritage. We had Yaqui on my grandma's heritage, which is out of Mexico and the Arizona area. And also I had what my grandpa called Chippewa.
He felt deeply for them, so he healed the ones who were sick. Creator Sets Free was concerned for them and wanted to give them some food.
Yeah, so Nations, my wife and I started as college students when we were working with Crew, and we noticed that there was hardly any outreach or even recognition of Native American people even on the college campus, but especially in ministry. And we also wanted them to know the story of Jesus and who he was, and doing that in a relevant way, using our cultural heritage, language that makes sense to us, and to just be able to tell the story of Jesus to our own people and to other Native American people who have heard it, but heard it in a way that didn't make sense to them or was presented to them in a forceful way, either as a child or as an adult. So we just wanted to be able to tell people the same story that affected my wife and I's life, following Jesus and in our own cultural, authentic way, and to be able to bring in people in that conversation of what it means to be a follower of the Jesus way and as an indigenous person at the same time.
When we lived on the Hopi Indian Reservation, I found a Hopi Bible, and I saw that nobody was reading the Hopi Bible. We learned that this was true everywhere. Natives weren't reading these translated Bibles. And eventually, I kept thinking, somebody's going to do this, right? Somebody's going to come along. I mean, I'm not qualified to translate the New Testament. And it was just, to me, like an overwhelming project. I mean, I was well studied in the Bible. I knew my scriptures. I was pastoring and teaching. I'd had Bible school classes and things like that. But man, I wasn't a trained translator. But no one, I didn't find anyone. Eventually, through confirmation, I said yes to it. It was in 2015 when I started the New Testament. And I worked in January, February, March, and I was making headway. I was talking to people. I was calling people. I was getting feedback. I was testing it out, with friends and Native people and stuff. But then I got this email from the CEO, the head of One Book of Canada. And I learned that One Book of Canada was part of the Wycliffe, global alliance of translators. They wanted to partner with Rain Ministries, our ministry, to do the New Testament and give us the tools and the backing and even raise support for us. So it was like, I think we're on track. This is the provision I've been looking for. This will give it credibility.
Side of the great lake, while he sent the people back to their homes. After that, he went up into the mountainside to be alone while he sent his voice.
One of the reasons I believe this film is important is our native people do not have many resources that have been created for them by the church and by believers in Jesus. There's very few resources. So the First Nation version is a resource for ministry to share the story of Jesus in a way Native people can relate to. It's more of a thought for thought translation instead of phrase for phrase. What many have called a dynamic equivalent. It's actually like many different translations. If you don't have a high regard for culture and the highest regard for Scripture, it's hard to do because you'll either let the culture go or you'll let the Scripture go. And here you have to hold them until you find the right blend that conveys the right meaning. That's why we had so many reviewers. And we had a consultant with 50 years experience reading every verse and asking questions, making sure that we had conveyed the meaning of the Greek. It really is like other translations, but what is different also is we translated the meaning for the first time that I know of all the names of people and places like Abraham. We all know what the meaning of Abraham's name, right? Father of many nations. And Paul says he is the father of many nations. That's what his name means. And so all the names have meaning. We know Yeshua means God or creator, delivers, sets free, saves. So we took creator for God, sets free for the meaning of deliverance, because he will set his people free from their bad hearts and their broken ways. So we're conveying the same message with different English words because our native people are speaking English words and they're speaking the English language, so we need words that relate to them. We just chose, as we looked at the meanings of the name and looked it up in the original language, we chose a native flair to that name as much as possible so it would relate to our native people.
I think through this video, it would be a great way to introduce people to the story of Jesus, one of many stories. And with my audience, I know we speak a different language. We understand things from a different perspective. So being able to use a video like this could be really helpful in our ministry to be able to share the story. Because that's what it really is a story of Jesus. And stories resonate in any culture, of any time period. That's how we teach children, that's how we teach adults. So having a video form, especially for our current world where media, so it's everywhere. So having a video like this could be a great way to introduce not only ourselves to a person we're talking to, but also in a way to show them, the story that has affected our lives so much, and to do that in a way that's not forceful, but fun through, an animation video.
Creator sets free came near them, walking on the water. When his followers saw him, they cried out in terror, "It is a ghost spirit." But he heard their cries and called out to them, "Do not fear." When he felt how strong the wind was, fear took hold of him. He began to sink and cried out, "Wisdom keeper, save me."
Most of our native people have heard some kind of Christian preaching. They watch Christian television, they watch different things. Many of them grew up in church and they heard the message of the gospel preached in so many ways, but it's mostly been done through a monocultural approach and a monocultural way. Culture is something God has given all different people. This translation, I think, can be a beginning to helping people see that there's beauty in cultures, and sometimes looking at the Creator, at God, through different lenses and through different expressions. All of our beauty of the different cultures all start respecting each other, loving each other. My hope for anyone who sees this film is that it will raise people's curiosity. For Native people, I want Native people to be curious about who Jesus is. Who is this man who could walk on water?